A Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder. Chapter 3, Part 1. That's it, Lisa. I'm ready to roll. Hannah shut the back of a Suburban and walked around to climb into the driver's seat. I should be back by 4 at the latest. Lisa nodded, handing Hannah a container of lemons that had been washed until any germs courageous enough to light on their surface had fled in terror. Do you want to take some extra sugar in case there's a run on the lemonade? I'll just borrow some from the school kitchen if I need it. Edna doesn't leave until 3:30. When Lisa had gone back inside, Hannah backed into the alley and drove off toward Jordan High. It had been named after the first mayor of Lake Eden, Ezekiel Jordan, but she suspected that most of the students believed that their school's namesake had played pro basketball. Jordan High and Washington Elementary were two separate buildings that were connected by a carpeted corridor with double-paned windows that overlooked the school grounds. The two schools shared a common auditorium and cafeteria to cut down on costs, and there was only one principal. The maintenance crew consisted of 4 people. 2 took care of the janitorial work, and the other 2 were responsible for the playground as well as the high school athletic fields. The Lake Eden School complex worked well. Since the grade school and the high school were connected, older brothers and sisters were always available to drive a younger sibling home in the event of an illness, or to calm a frightened kindergartner who missed mom and dad. This arrangement also provided a bonus for Jordan High students. The seniors who planned to become teachers were encouraged to volunteer as classroom aides during their free period. The early on-the-job training had produced several college graduates who'd returned to Lake Eden to accept teaching positions at the school. As she turned on 3rd Street and drove past the city block that had been set aside for family recreation, Hannah realized that there were no preschoolers playing in Lake Eden Park. The chains on the swings were perfectly motionless. The merry-go-round was still laden with colorful leaves that had fallen during the morning, and though the temperature had topped the predicted high of 48 degrees, there were no children on tricycles pedaling along the circular sidewalk around the playground. For a moment, this struck Hannah as odd. It was the type of weather that a mother of a preschooler prayed for. But then she remembered what had happened this morning, and she understood why the park was empty. There was a killer loose in Lake Eden. Concerned parents were keeping their children inside, out of harm's way. There was a long line of cars idling at curbside on Gull Avenue. It stretched for 3 blocks, leading to and from the city complex, blocking access to driveways and fire hydrants in blatant disregard for the city parking statutes. Hannah inched her way past worried-looking parents, waiting for the dismissal bell to ring, and as she neared the school, she saw that Herb Beesman, his patrol car freshly washed and waxed, was parked diagonally in front of the entrance. He wasn't handing out any tickets for the infractions that were occurring right under his nose, and Hannah assumed that he'd placed the safety of Lake Eden's children at a higher priority than filling the city's coffers. Hannah reached back between the seats and snagged a bag of molasses crackers. She always carried several bags of cookies with her for times like these. Then she pulled up beside Herb's patrol car and rolled down a window. "Hi, Herb. I'm going in to cater the Boy Scouts Awards banquet. Is it okay if I pull into the lot?" "Sure, Hannah," Herb responded, his eyes on the bag of cookies in her hand. "Just make sure you park legally. Are those for me?" Hannah handed him the bag. "You're doing a great job protecting the kids. I'm sure the parents appreciate it." "Thanks." Herb looked pleased at her compliment. "Does your mother still hate me for the ticket I gave her?" "She doesn't exactly hate you, Herb." Hannah decided that this wasn't the time to tell her precisely what her mother had called him. "But she's a little put out." "I'm sorry, I had to do it, Hannah." "I like your mother, but I can't have people speeding through town." "I understand, and I think Mother does too. She's just not quite willing to admit it yet." Hannah began to grin. "At least one good thing came out of that ticket." "What's that?" "She stopped trying to fix me up with you." Hannah was chuckling as she drove off. Judging from the surprised expression on Herb's face, He hadn't guessed that her mother had previously considered him for the position of son-in-law. The wide gate that separated the teacher's parking lot from the school grounds was open, and Hannah drove through. As she traveled down the lane between the rows of parked cars, she noticed a conspicuous absence of new or expensive vehicles. Teaching didn't pay well enough for any luxuries, and Hannah thought that it was a shame. There was something really wrong with the system when a teacher could make more money flipping burgers at a fast food chain. The strip of blacktop by the back door of the cafeteria was peppered with warning signs. Hannah pulled up by the one that read, "No parking at any time by order of the Lake Eden Parking Authority." In smaller letters, it warned that violators would be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, but Herb Beesman was the sole employee of the Lake Eden Parking Authority, and he was out watching the front entrance. Hannah didn't feel guilty about violating a city parking statute. She was running late, and she had to unload her supplies. In less than 10 minutes, a horde of hungry Boy Scouts would be clamoring for her cookies and lemonade. The minute that Hannah pulled up, Edna Ferguson opened the kitchen door. She was a bird-thin woman in her 50s, and she wore a welcoming smile. "Hi, Hannah. I was wondering when you'd get here. Do you want some help unloading?" "Thanks, Edna." Hannah handed her a box of supplies to carry. "The Scouts aren't here yet, are they?" Edna shook her netted hair. "Mr. Purvis called an all-school assembly, and they're still in the auditorium. If their parents aren't here to pick them up, he wants them to walk home in groups." Hannah nodded, hefting a large box of cookies that Lisa had packed, and followed Edna into the school kitchen. As she entered the large room with its wall-long counters and manses, Hannah wondered what it would be like to be the last child in the group. You'd start off together, feeling safe by virtue of sheer numbers. But one by one your friends would peel off to go into their own homes. When the last one had left, you'd have to go the rest of the way by yourself, hoping and praying that the killer wasn't lurking in the bushes. There was no suffering, was there, Hannah? Hannah set the box down and turned to Edna. "What?" "With Ron. I've been thinking about it all day. He was such a nice boy. If it was his turn to die, I hope it was quick and painless." Hannah didn't believe that everyone had a prearranged time to die. Thinking like that was too much like buying a lottery ticket and figuring that it was your turn to win the jackpot. Bill told me he thought it was instantaneous. I guess we should be grateful for that. And to think that he was right here only minutes before he was murdered. It's enough to give a body chills. Hannah placed her lemons on one of Edna's chopping blocks and began to cut them into paper-thin slices. "Then Ron made his delivery this morning." "Of course. That boy never missed a day, and he took pride in his work." Hannah added this tidbit to the small stockpile of facts she'd gathered. Ron had stalked Jordan High schoolers this morning, for whatever that was worth. "Did you see him this morning?" "No, I never do. I don't come in until 8, and he was long gone by then. But the cooler had been restocked." Hannah unpacked her heavy-duty plastic punch bowl and handed it to Edna. She only used the glass one for formal functions like weddings and the senior prom. Then she picked up the huge thermos of lemonade and the bowl of lemon slices she'd cut and led the way into the main part of the cafeteria. A table had already been set up for the refreshments, covered with blue paper tablecloth, and there was a cardboard file box at the head of another similarly covered table. Gil came down on his free period to set up. Edna told her. "He said to tell you that he's bringing a balloon centerpiece." "Okay, I'll leave room for it." Hannah motioned for Edna to put the punch bowl down. Then she opened the thermos and started to pour the lemonade into the bowl. "You didn't notice anything unusual about the way Ron left the kitchen?" "Can't say I did." "What's in those ice cubes, Hannah? They look cloudy." "They're made out of lemonade, so they won't dilute it when they melt. I do the same thing with any punch I make." Hannah finished transferring the lemonade and floated the slices of lemon on the top. As she stepped back to admire the effect, she noticed that Edna was frowning. "Do you think it needs more lemon slices?" "No, it looks really professional." I was just thinking about Ron. You and everybody else. Come on, Edna. I've got to unpack the cookies. Edna followed her back to the kitchen and she gasped when Hannah lifted the lid on the box. Just look at that. Those are real pretty, Hannah. I think so too. Hannah smiled as she arranged the cookies on a tray. Lisa had piped on yellow and blue frosting in the shape of Boy Scout logos. Lisa Hordman did the decorations. She's getting to be an expert with a pastry bag. Lisa's real talented. I swear that girl could do anything if she put her mind to it. It's just a pity she had to give up on college to take care of her father. I know. Her older brothers and sisters wanted to put him in a nursing home, but Lisa didn't think that was right. Hannah handed Edna a box of small blue paper plates, gold napkins, and blue plastic cups. You take this. I'll bring the cookies. It didn't take long to arrange the plates, cups, and napkins on the table. Once everything was done, they went back into the kitchen for a cup of coffee. They were sitting at the wooden table in the corner of the kitchen waiting for the scouts to arrive, when Edna gave another long sigh. It's just such a pity, that's all. You mean about Ron? Yes, that poor boy was running himself ragged with those roots of his. He was putting in 60-hour week, and Max didn't pay overtime. It was getting to him. Did Ron tell you that? Edna shook her head. Betty Jackson did. She was there when Ron asked Max for an assistant. That was over 6 months ago. But Max was too cheap to put anyone else on the payroll. Hannah knew. Max Turner had the reputation for pinching a penny until it screamed in pain. For someone who was rumored to have money to burn, he certainly didn't live the part. Max drove a new car, but that was his only luxury. He still lived in his parents' old house in the back of Cozy Cow Dairy. He'd fixed it up some, but that had been necessary. It would have fallen down around his ears if he hadn't. I just think it's such a shame that Ron had to die on the day that he finally got his assistant.